All right, joining me now is criminal defense attorney Trinity Hundredmark. Trinity, thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so we were looking at a hearing where Jane Doe number 5 was testifying, incredibly detailed she was, about the first encounter she had with Winslow at a Crunch Fitness gym in San Diego. How did you, we obviously can't show the Jane Doe's face, obviously to protect her identity. What did you feel as far as her credibility is concerned?
Well, her recall was just amazing. I mean, the details in which she described everything is just perfect. And that's problematic, I think, for the defense. Now, the one little thing I think they could pick apart is she didn't recall the date. And she said, it's something I've tried to put out of my mind. It's something I didn't want to remember. So I think you could try to hone in on that and say, well, she doesn't remember the date. Perhaps this isn't even the right person. She didn't report it to staff at that time. So, you know, maybe she's just making this up to bolster the second incident that she's going to talk about or that we'll hear about later. So perhaps they could do that, but her detail about how far away he was, where his legs were, what machine they were on, he was facing the parking lot. I mean, those are such specific details that it's, you know, it gives it such an air of credibility. I mean, those are the things that when you're prepping a witness or you're meeting with a client, you're saying, I want you to tell me all the details. I want you to give all the specifics because that makes it sound more true.
Exactly. And a date really doesn't mean much to her, right? And she's 77. I mean, but for her to remember those details and bring it back to a time, she obviously, you could hear in her voice, she was emotional. It bothered her. She was fearful. We'll get into that a little later, but she remembered the details because she remembered how she felt.
Right.
A date doesn't necessarily bring you back to that. So,
right.
Yeah, if they attacked her on that, I mean, the state could just say, I mean, what is a date to her? Right?
Well, and at the time, because she certainly doesn't know at that time, she's going to have a second incident, right?
Right.
So she's not thinking, okay, I need to remember this date because there's going to be another one in the future.
Right. And
so I need to be able to go back and know that. I mean, so it wasn't significant.
She probably thought this was a one-off, right?
Right.
She probably thought, okay, hope to God this was a one-off. He was a creepy dude. Maybe I won't see him again.
Right.
And obviously, they had a second run-in. Okay, so she identified him in court, right? They asked her to identify Winslow in court. She said, I mean, blue tie, glasses, gray jacket, unlike a Jane Doe 1 who didn't identify him correctly in open court. So that was good for her, and she's 77.
Right.
Okay, so what do you think, as a criminal defense lawyer, I know when I was practicing, my client gets out on bond, they've got bond conditions. I always warn my clients, you're being watched. Anything you do right now is going to be used against you, and you need to understand that you're going to make my job a lot harder. So help me help you stay out of trouble. What do you think of Winslow bonding out on a $2 million bond in February and then this happening while he's on bond?
I mean, as a lawyer, it's your worst nightmare, right?
How do you explain that?
It would be very difficult to explain. And I mean, I think their bigger problem is as a juror, you're thinking, okay, we are monitoring this man. This man knows he's being watched. This man knows he's under scrutiny, and he's still going to have these sort of interactions. What choice do we have but to punish him so he doesn't do this to other people?
Right.
And that's the biggest fear. I mean, if he's got people watching him and he can still do this type of behavior, if we just let him go back, what's he going to do next?
Well, see, and you start to wonder, do you have a condition? Do you have a problem? Or are you just... do you just have audacity?
Right.
Do you feel as though you won't get caught, right? You're above the law. It's remarkable. And the thing is, it's making his case that much harder for his defense because how is he going to defend himself against 5 different Jane Does? You can't necessarily say all of them are lying.
Right. I mean, it's the classic thing, right? One person, okay, maybe you can say that person's got an issue. You know, even I think in this case, Jane Doe 1 doesn't identify him well. There's some issues with her story, right? Then you get number 2. Then you get 3, then you get 4. I mean, the more people that come out, I mean, we've seen it with the Me Too movement, which I think is going to be instrumental in this case. The more and more people come out, it's like, okay, there's got to be some ring of truth here. Where there's smoke, there's fire, right? And so the more people that come out, I mean, that's why I think initially some of the motions to sever and the joinders were so key and so harmful to the defense, because the more you stack these together, the more it's going to look like, okay, we got a predator here. There's somebody with a serious problem. Individually, perhaps you could get out of some of them, but altogether, it's a real problem.
It's similar to what happened in Bill Cosby's case.
Exactly.
Had a mistrial when they had just one accuser, and then the second trial, he had multiple accusers come in, and that just bolstered the state's case. So,
absolutely.
All right, Trinity, stay put. You're not going anywhere. All right, more of Jane Doe number 5's compelling testimonies coming up live right here on Court TV.
That's my teammate, so I ain't gonna sit here and tell you that he did do it when I don't know nothing about what's even going on. So I don't think he did it. I mean, if the evidence come back and says he did, then he did. But I'm gonna ride with him. Not guilty. Not guilty.
Welcome back. That was C.J. Jones, a former teammate of Kellen Winslow. He told Court TV he doesn't think Winslow did any of the things he's accused of. This morning, we're bringing you the highlights of a pretrial hearing last month where Jane Doe number 5 described the first of 2 encounters with Winslow at a gym in Carlsbad, California. Let's take you back into court.
When he was looking at you in the way you described, did that make you uncomfortable?
Of course it made me uncomfortable.
Why is that?
I think because I wanted to be free to use the machines, but I continued doing because I didn't think other than the feeling uncomfortable, I didn't think that was dangerous or nothing like that. So I continued using the machines. I decided not to leave.
Was there a point in time when he came closer to where you were?
He never came closer. I was closer to him. I continued using the machines and I went to the machine right next to him.
And when you went to the machine next to him, was that part of your routine workout?
Yes, it is.
Do you recall if you spoke to him?
No, I did not. At that time, when I using the machine, I was facing the floor and he was facing the parking lot, so it was like this.
So
okay?
Just to make sure that it's accurate, what you just did is you took your left hand and your right hand and you pointed them with your fingers directed towards each other. Is that correct?
Exactly.
And so then you were facing opposite directions?
Yes, opposite, and the face is opposite directions, and the machine is very close. It's about one machine to the next one is about this distance,
And you're
very close.
And you're holding your hands out at a distance that would be about 3 feet?
That is the machine that I'm using, and that's the machine that is sitting.
All right, the rectal reflex, she's holding her hands 2.5 feet apart.
Okay, and so the 2 machines right next to each other,
Right
is that
next
fair to
to each
say?
other. Right next to each other. So
Ms. Doe, just take one moment. And just again, remember that not only are we having this conversation, but the court reporter is taking down everything that I say and everything that you say. So she has to have an opportunity to be able to hear both my questions and your answers, okay?
it's okay.
So then let me ask you, when he was on the machine next to you, was he exercising on that machine?
No, he just had the door. He just had the legs open.
Okay. And was this the same machine where he would be flexing his legs inward from the
He
knees?
never moved from that machine, which he originally sat from the beginning.
Okay, just a moment. We have to make sure that Mr. Owens completely finishes his question before you give the answer, because if you start answering the question before the question is finished, then the court reporter can't take down 2 people talking at the same time.
Okay.
So I know you might, do you want some water? Yeah. You have some? Okay. So please make sure he finishes the question. Go ahead, Mr. Owens.
Thank you, Your Honor. When he was not exercising on the machine next to you, what was the first thing that you saw him doing?
Since I was so close to him, I happened to notice that sometimes he just like kind of stroke his penis and touching his penis, but I didn't pay much attention to that.
Did you in fact see him stroking his penis?
I saw him, he's just, yes, stroking his penis.
And you're gesturing with your right hand over his groin area. Is that right?
That is right.
Do you recall what he was wearing, as you can best remember?
I remember exactly what he was wearing. That was a blue light sweatpants and a sleeveless blue t-shirt.
A sleeveless blue t-shirt and light blue sweatpants?
Yes.
And when you are using the term sweatpants, can you best describe the material?
a very light material, no the kind of sweatpants that very thick, you know, he has a backup and thick. That was a light.
Are
sweatpants.
you using the term light to refer to thin
To
pants?
thin, exactly, very thin.
Can you, in that first moment when you saw him stroking himself, what did you do?
I try not to look at him.
Did you see where he was looking when he was doing that?
But he looked at me.
Now, when you saw him doing that and looking
Just a
at
moment.
you,
When she said he looked at me, she turned her head to the left. So did he
Yeah,
move his head in
yeah.
order to look at you?
Yeah,
Okay, the witness did indicate she turned her head from facing straight to facing to her left. Go ahead.
thank you, Your Honor. And when he looked at you, was he continuing to stroke his penis?
yeah, he did. He did a couple of times, yes.
How long would you estimate he was touching his penis while seated next to you?
I would say a few minutes because he did a few times, you know, and if I look, it's because I was right next to him
What did
and,
you,
and facing each other, so that was impossible for me not to look.
Jane Doe 5 is able to confidently recount her version of events and had no problem identifying Winslow in court. But that's not the case for all of his accusers.
In the middle with the pink shirt on?
That was Jane Doe number 1, pointing to defense attorney Brian Watkins. Let's bring back Trinity 100 Mark to discuss. Okay, that last clip, I have to talk about that. When I watched that, not only was I shocked, right, that she identified, Jane Doe number 1, identified Winslow's attorney
Right.
as her perpetrator, but the attorney looked like he was doing it on purpose. I mean, he was slouched in his chair. He almost gave off this sort of meek, not in control, like most attorneys would
Guilty
be more.
vibe. I mean, he looks guilty.
He looked guilty.
Yeah.
And Winslow standing, you know, pretty straight, you know, confidently, and they look alike.
They do look alike. Well, and typically, you know, as we've all seen, you know, trials on court TV,
Yeah.
you know, you have your attorney, the client in the middle, and attorney on the other side. So
Yeah.
that's typically how they did it. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind they did that on purpose.
Okay.
On the idea that, you know, and perhaps
I thought I
she's
was the
not-
only one, 'cause
no,
I think
mean,
people
there's
didn't-
that
okay.
is the Perry Mason moment that every defense attorney is looking for. You have them identify the wrong person. I mean, you go to trial school, right, and they'll have these stories of lawyers who have put their client in the back and put somebody else at the witness table, and they've identified that person because you just assume it's that person. Oh, it's that person sitting next to the lawyer right there, and your client's actually, you know, sitting somewhere else. So that's a moment that every lawyer is hoping they can get, and they got it. And it's going to play out amazingly in court, I think.
Be an advocate, yes, I'm a criminal defense lawyer too, I get it, but it seems so slimy and shady.
It
it's
does,
just-
except if she really can identify him, right? I mean, if she really can't identify him, then, you know, perhaps, again, let's take Jane Doe, you know, 2 through 5 out of
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
equation.
yeah.
If we're looking at this as Jane
Oh,
Doe
yeah,
1,
it'd be
which we
problematic.
should be,
Right.
right? I
Right.
mean, yeah, perhaps that, you know, she was raped. I'm not denying that all those things happened to her. But
Just
if it
not
wasn't
Kellen
him,
Winslow. Right,
and she
right.
can't identify him, I mean, that certainly should be looked at by a jury, right?
I mean, exactly, but they definitely had a win with that. But then
Absolutely.
obviously DNA. plays
DNA is a
some-
problem. I mean, there's that.
DNA is
That's
a problem. We'll get to that
That's a
later.
secondary issue. But yeah, I mean, as that issue, that's the one they're looking at. I mean, that to me, in this whole entirety of the situation, Jane Doe number 1, I think they've got their best thing with regard to the false identification. Jane Doe number 4, with being that it was so long and consent and some of those are their two kind of, you know, wins, I think.
Yeah.
The ones in the middle, it's getting a little tricky for them, I think.
Well, okay, so let's go back to Jane Doe number 5. She was describing, it was kind of hard to follow, but describing the situation, the first encounter with Winslow on a machine. Obviously, it's a machine, I use it too at the gym. It's, you know, where you kind of lock your knees in. And, you know.
Right.
So I don't even know what that's called. You could tell I'm not a big gym buff. But so she's trying to describe how close she was. She said that she saw him stroking his penis. She tried to say that, you know, he was looking at her and then she was trying not to look at him.
Right.
How do you think that, so far from what you've watched, how do you think the cross should kind of poke holes in that story?
Well, I mean, I think, they could point out, for somebody who's trying not to look at them, you have a lot of recall. You seem to remember a lot of details.
Yeah.
But I think where they may come into trouble with that, and again, you got 2 male lawyers there that are doing the majority of the, the direction of the case. But if they get female jurors, I know I have, I'm not sure you have. We've all been in one of those situations where a man is doing something inappropriate and you are trying not to look. I mean, you are trying not to pay attention. So I think it's going to resonate with anybody who's possibly been in that situation, that you can remember with complete detail while also trying to not gawk and stare at the situation. Because what you want to do as a victim is get yourself out of that situation.
Exactly. No, obviously. And she was just too detailed for a 77-year-old to come into court. I think she has other things to do than to come into court and lie about something. And she was just so incredibly detailed. She sounded very credible to me. Okay, stay put. Coming up, a social justice movement is impacting the criminal justice system. That's according to Winslow's defense, at least. How the Me Too movement is affecting jury selection in the Kellen Winslow trial. Stick with Court TV Live.
That rape. He left her on the side of the road. He told her, if you tell anybody about this, I'll murder you. Which is similar phrasing to what Mr. Winslow said to Jane Doe number 1. I'll murder you if she did not submit.
Welcome back. That's the prosecutor in the Kellen Winslow case, claiming in a pretrial hearing that Winslow threatened to kill 2 of the women he's accused of raping if they told anyone. Jury selection is expected to wrap up today in Winslow's rape trial. Court TV's crime and justice reporter Ted Rollins is in San Diego and has the latest.
Good morning, Yodit. By the end of the day here in San Diego County, we are expecting to have a jury of 12 and 4 alternates seated. On Thursday, we learned that the Winslow defense team will not be using CTE or any sort of mental impairment as their main defense, which basically means to expect that they will be attacking each one of these Jane Does, 1 through 5, and their stories one by one as they take the witness stand. And we got a little bit of a preview of that during the voir dire process on Thursday afternoon. Brian Watkins, one of Winslow's attorneys, really took over the room. He addressed the jurors and asked specifically about the Me Too movement, their feelings about the Me Too movement, saying that accusations in a court of law mean absolutely nothing. And do you believe that anyone who alleges sexual assault should be believed? It was very powerful, and it was a way to send a message to these potential jurors that these alleged victims, Jane Does 1 through 5, should not be believed. It's going to be a very interesting day as the final jurors are picked, and we will be here for all of it. Yodit, back to you.
All right, let's bring back criminal defense attorney Trinity Hundredmark and bring in Rachel Kaufman. She's also a criminal defense attorney. All right, ladies, so jury selection is supposed to be done today. They're going to be impaneling 12, hopefully with 4 alternates. All right, before we get to the Me Too discussion, because it can get a little, emotional and very sensitive of a topic, but okay, Rachel, criminal defense attorney, what kind of juror do you want on this case if you were representing Kellen Winslow?
If I was representing Kellen Winslow, I would definitely want more male jurors than female jurors, and I would want jurors who have not had personal experiences as sexual assault victims.
Okay, interesting. Why more males than females?
Because I do think that we are living in a climate, not to get to the Me Too movement too quick, but I do think that we're living in a climate where it's almost disrespectful to not believe people who allege that they're victims of sexual assault.
Okay.
So I think men have more of a fear of that happening to them. I don't think women have as much of a fear of being accused of something like that if they had never done it.
So what's interesting, trying cases myself, I have found that women are more harsh on other women in this particular arena, right? They're more likely to not believe women. They're more likely to question why they've waited than men. So that was interesting, and that's why I asked. Okay, so Trinity, what are you looking for in terms of the state? You hadn't been a former prosecutor, but you've tried enough cases to know what the state is looking for. What do you think they're going to do?
Well, I think you're looking for, I think you are looking for women, and I do agree with you. I think women tend to be hard on women, but I think in these particular circumstances, when you have DNA, when you have 5 people together, I think those are things that women can identify with and are going to say, as I said before, where there's smoke, there's fire. And they are going to be concerned about putting someone like this who appears to be a predator back out on the streets. And we've all been in some of those situations. We've all been in situations where men have been inappropriate, where men have done things that are lewd, that are crass, that are whatever. And I think that is going to play into some of this. And I think if I was the state and I was looking for jurors, that's what I would be looking for, someone that was sympathetic to this. I would also potentially want women because they may not be football fans.
Right.
They may
So
not
that's-
have
yeah.
that kind of starstruck, thing going on with the Winslow family, because obviously they're football icons. They may also not know as much about CTE. Again, I'm being gender biased here, but they may not know as much about CTE and some of the things that go into that. So I'd be kind of looking in that general vicinity if I was the state.
Okay, so state doesn't want sports enthusiasts. Okay, so gotta hang tight. You guys are gonna stick around. At a pretrial hearing last month, Jane Doe 5 described an encounter with Kellen Winslow at a gym in Carlsbad. She said she saw him staring at her as he rubbed his penis.
What did you see him do next?
He just stayed there. He just stayed there, and I asked him, if you're not using the machine, may I use it, please?
Why did you
And
ask him?
he did get up.
Did he get up?
He get up.
Why did you ask him if he was using that? Why did you ask him if he's not using that machine, can you use it?
Because he wasn't using. He was just sitting there.
Based on what he was doing, was that continuing to make you uncomfortable?
Absolutely. And I want for him to just move from there.
So what happened after you, pardon me, go ahead.
So I asked him to move from there.
What did he do?
He get up. He get up, and I used the machine, and I used a couple of more machines, and then it happened that one machine that I was using, it was facing the floor. So he was standing there. I don't think I saw what he was doing, but he was standing there. But when I using that machine, first in the floor, where I have to use my legs just moving in and out, he came in front of me and started doing some kind of stretch exercises, something moving his body, his hands were up and down, just all kind of move.
Ms. Doe, let me ask you, how far away was he from where you were on the machine when he was stretching in that way?
Very, very close to me,
And you're
right
holding,
in front.
you're holding your hands out at arm's length, is that right?
Like where the table is.
And you're referring to the court reporter's table directly in front of you, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, so about 2 to 3 feet. And just to be clear, you said you were facing the floor? Were you
I
laying
was-
on your stomach doing an exercise?
No, I was just sitting. No, I was sitting in the machine, but facing the floor, because most machines, they facing the parking lot,
Your Honor, she's referring to the second floor
to the
area.
second floor.
Second floor, okay. I'm sorry, when you said you were facing the floor, I thought you might have been laying
No,
down. But
no.
you're sitting
just-
straight up?
Yeah. I'm sitting like this and using my legs.
I see. All right, next question.
In terms of what he was doing as he was standing approximately 2 to 3 feet away from you, can you demonstrate for the court what he was doing when he was standing in front?
He was just moving things like that and doing all kinds of movements in front of me.
The record reflected.
Yeah, the record reflected the witness was standing and she's moving her arms that were outstretched to her side and bending at the elbow, moving the hands back and forth from side to side at about head level. All right?
Did you notice anything about him while he was doing that?
I noticed that he had an erected penis
What, could you tell that his penis was erect as he stood in front of you?
right in front of me. And I wanted to yell I wanted to scream, to get away from me, to move. I couldn't. I couldn't say a word.
Were you upset by what he was doing?
Very upset. I was so uneasy. I was so sick, and I could not talk. So he saw my expression. He saw my face. Probably was terrified.
When he was
Objection.
doing this,
Move to strike, that's speculative.
Your Honor, it's based on her observation.
I'll allow, you can cover it on cross.
Was he looking at you while he was extending his
Of
erect
course.
penis towards you?
Of course, he was looking at me.
Okay, don't forget to wait until he
No.
finishes with the question.
An objection, Your Honor, I move to strike the answer. The question was leading.
Just based on her description, Your Honor.
Yeah, it was just a follow-up question, so the court will overrule the objection and the answer will stand.
Now, Ms. Doe, as he was doing that, did he do anything with his genital area? Was he continuing to touch himself?
No, he didn't touch his head. No, he did not. Just the exercise. But when he saw my face, that was petrified. He said to me, "You see this? Do you like it?"
And may the record reflect you took your right hand and you pointed towards his
Just
genital area?
pointed, yes,
right.
pointed.
The witness is pointing to her crotch area, and that's what the person did?
That's what he did.
Oh.
And he asked me, "Do you like it?"
And how did
Okay,
you?
just to be clear, he was pointing towards his penis, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, that's consistent with the action that she's making here in court. Next question.
Thank you, Your Honor. And the things he said to you were, do you see this? Do you like this?
That's exactly what he said to me.
All right, coming up, Jane Doe number 5 explains why she initially didn't tell her husband about her encounter with Winslow. Welcome back. We left off with Jane Doe 5 under direct examination by prosecutor Dan Owens. The 77-year-old is a woman who is describing her first encounter with Winslow at Crunch Fitness Gym.
Could you describe his tone?
That was like a happy tone. A tone that he was enjoying. A tone that,
Objection, speculative.
Overruled, she's describing the way in which he said it. She's not saying how he felt. You can continue.
Did you feel threatened by what he was doing?
absolutely. But my reaction was,
Objection, it's not responsive.
Overruled, you can finish your answer. Your reaction was
my
what?
reaction was to scream and say something, and I said, "Why you just said that to me? What you just said to me?"
Did he respond to your question?
No, he moved, he grabbed his bag from the floor and walked downstairs.
Now, did you see him in the gym after he had asked you that last question?
I saw him right at the end, but I was in the second, when I went to the first floor, I saw him. So when I saw him that he was in the heavyweight section, later when I finished upstairs, I just couldn't finish my workout and I went inside to the locker room.
So let me ask you, with respect to this first incident, after it happened, did you tell any employees at the gym what the defendant had done? Initially?
I did not say anything to anybody. I just wanted to forget about it. I wanted to keep this from my mind. I wanted to believe that did not happen to me.
After that first incident, did you speak to someone, anyone at all, about what happened?
I was waiting for my husband because I finished before him. I was waiting, so we went to the car and I told him in the car something terrible happened to me in the second floor. And he told me what happened. So I told him what happened. He said, okay, like he wanted to start the car. He said, you have to report at the manager.
Did you that day?
I didn't want it. I said, no, I don't want to get involved with anything. I want to forget this. But you have to report.
Why didn't you tell your husband immediately while at the gym what the defendant had done?
I didn't want to, because I was afraid that he going to ask me who the person is, and it's going to be a confrontation or something. I didn't want to do anything like that. I wanted just to this thing go away.
Can I ask you how old your husband is?
He's 80. He's 80, 79.
So then after that conversation with your husband in the car, did you decide not to tell the employees that day?
I decided not to tell him, the manager or anybody in the gym. Nobody knew what happened, other than my husband.
So then moving forward to the Friday incident on February 22nd, what we referred to as the pool area or the jacuzzi. Between the first incident and this second incident, did you ever see the defendant at the gym that you recall?
Never again.
On the second incident, where were you in the gym when you first saw the defendant?
When I normally finish my workout with the machines, I go to use the spa. I was sitting in the jacuzzi in the right-hand side, against the wall, on the right-hand side, facing the doors for the locker room.
Were you alone?
I was again alone.
At that point in time, was it your regular habit and custom that you would meet your husband in the pool area when he was done with his workout?
Yes.
Were you expecting your husband to come?
I was expecting my husband is going to come from the men's locker room.
When you were seated in the jacuzzi, what were you wearing?
I was wearing my bathing suit.
And while you were seated there, you mentioned you were looking over in the area of the men's locker room. Is that right?
It's the men's locker room and the women's locker room. So I was facing that in that corner you can face that.
And do you recall seeing the defendant again?
I was there and the door opened and I see the same man standing by the door wearing the same exact clothes that from the previous time and holding the same bag from the previous time, just standing by the door.
All right, let's bring back Trinity and Rachel. All right, Rachel, how do you find Jane Doe number 5? Because you weren't in the discussion earlier with me and Trinity about her credibility. How do you think she sounds?
As a criminal defense attorney, it's hard to hear. It's hard to hear what she says and just automatically believe it. I would want to wait to find out if there's surveillance video that confirms or verifies what she's saying. Mm-hmm. I also find it interesting that there had been so much publicity about Mr. Winslow and things that he had already done, and so I'm interested in how much knowledge she had of who he was.
Okay, let's just think about this in just more of a common sense, mindset. She's 77.
Yeah, why would she, I guess the question is, why would she come forward?
Why would she spend time at a pretrial describing in such detail about 2 instances? In fact, she was saying, I wanted the first one to go away. I didn't report it, right? And then it happened again, and then she's like, okay, this is a little extreme. Not to mention there aren't any pending civil suits, right? So I don't think that there's a motive on her end. She has way more to do. She's 77. Trinity, what did you think about the issue of the second instance being 9 days apart? 9 days.
Yeah, well, I mean, clearly, again, it goes back to what I said before. I mean, if you're a juror hearing this, again, knowing he's out on bond, knowing that, he's got these other pending charges, it's just, this man clearly can't control himself. He's got some issues. And then what are we going to do about it as a society to protect everybody else from him in the future? And I think that's what everybody's going to be looking at, thinking in the back of their mind is, okay, he should know. I mean, you're under surveillance. I mean, you got GPS tracker on you. People know where you are, and you still can't seem to control yourself. When are you going to get it? And I think that's what would be really scary to me as a second incident. Now, whether he picked her out, whether it was just a matter of circumstance, you know, that, oh, look, she happens to be there. You know, we haven't seen these people because they're all Jane Does. We don't know what they look like. We can't really identify. Does he have a type? Is there clearly somebody he's after? I mean, based on their ages, maybe, but that will be interesting to see.
I mean, you would think that after the reaction she gave him the first time, he wouldn't dare try to, you know, do anything the second time. So it makes you question the kind of
there's something
mental
going
thought
on,
process
right?
he's going through.
There.
All right, Trinity, Rachel, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.